Thank you, Wallace. I feel honored to have been asked to speak here tonight. My sobriety date is May the 10th of 1984. But for the grace of God and people just like you in rooms just like this, I have not found it necessary to take a drink since that time. Normally, Wallace calls me like January or February, Harriet Brinkley. You know I'm telling the truth. And so normally it's sometimes like October, November. But this year I had surgery. I'll tell you about that later. So I could not come. And so then he asked me, could I come tonight? My sponsor taught me the answer is always yes. If there's something in your power that you can do, your response should always be yes. And so that's how I try to work, and I share that same message with the ladies that I work with. I know for me that there was someone that I feel obligated. There was someone there with a hand out to help me. So I feel obligated to be there with a hand out to help someone else. I'm a grandma. I have 19 grandkids. I'm a great grandma. I have 8 great grandkids. 11 of those grandkids are kids by my daughters. I'm the other mom. And the other 8, I tell them, I don't know any difference, and they don't either. I tell people they stand around with their little grubby hands out at Christmas and birthday like the rest of them. But the other, I'm sort of like surrogate grandma, for them because they don't have a grandmother in their life. I grew up in a very religious home. The only thing that you could listen to, my dad would not let us have a television. We had to go to church every time the doors were open. The only thing that you could listen to on the radio was religious music. My dad left my mom, and I say he left her with 5 babies because the youngest one was like 6 months old and the oldest one was like 10. And when my dad left my mom, I loved my dad, but I made up my mind I didn't want a man. I said all I wanted was me and God. And then that was all I needed because I felt that all a man would do would leave you. And for kids, I felt like all you'd end up doing is crying at night over them. But I know my mama had to have prayed for me many nights, and my mama had to have cried many a tears over me before I found this Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. It was really rough in my mama's home only because my mama had never worked, and when my dad left her, you can imagine what life was like. We had to go on welfare. I remember the welfare lady coming, somebody would say, here come Miss Mills. So you had to go, if you had a little radio or something, you had to go hide it up under the bed. Lots of things that you could not have if you were receiving public assistance. But I remember the time Miss Mills told my mama that she was going to have to give some of us up for adoption if she was going to cut the welfare if she didn't give some of us up for adoption. And my mama said, I'm not giving up one of my babies. I say that God gave me an awesome mom because my mom did without many of days so that we could have. My mama had some strict rules. She never ate with us. It wasn't until I was an adult that it dawned on me she never ate with us because she wanted to make sure that we had. My mama, you could not play cards. I don't care if it was old maids. You ain't bring no cards in my mama's house. You didn't drink root beer because it had the word beer on it. You didn't bring eggnog into my mama's house because in her mind, everybody put white lightning in eggnog. I always felt different. If I would walk in this room and you would bust out laughing, I call it the committee in my head. The committee in my head would tell me, they're laughing at you. And I would believe it. Still today, I have a tendency to listen to that committee in my head. People often, my home group say, Harriet, so why you I was always taught, don't go up in your head by yourself. And they would tell me, they say, Harriet, why do you always listen to that committee up in your head when it lies to you every time, but you still turn around and listen to that committee? It was just like getting ready to come down here. I wanted someone to come with me, and I called a lady that we worked together for many years at Wright School in Durham. And I asked her, would she ride down with me tonight? And she said, of course I will, so you won't have to ride by yourself. I had listened. I told her tonight driving down here, so please help me give Vivian a round of applause. Don't y'all scare her to death because she don't know nothing about no AA. Don't know nothing about no alcoholism. I told her just a little bit of my life last week, and she was saying, what? Not you? I said, yeah, you better believe it, because that was the life that I used to live. And but I told her coming down here, I said, the committee in my head said, don't call and answer because she's going to maybe come up with an excuse. She's not going to want to ride with you all the way down to Southern Pines. But when I called her, her response was, as I told you, yeah, I'll ride with you so you won't have to ride by yourself. She's always been a great friend like that. Back to my mom. I always felt that I wish I was someplace else doing something other than what I was doing. And I felt if that happened, then my life would be okay. I would look at the people down the street and they had a triplex house. Man, if I was that little girl, things would be okay. My mama eventually let us get a TV. And most of you are too young to remember there was a TV program called Sky King. Sky King had an airplane. And his niece Penny lived with him. And Penny had everything. And one thing Penny had that I wanted more than anything was she had long hair and a ponytail. My hair never grew past right here. But even before that, I would tell my mom, like when Shirley Temple first came out, Mama, I want some Shirley Temple curls. And she'd look at me and say, baby, you ain't got no Shirley Temple hair. And then when Penny came along, I wanted a ponytail so I could swing it around like Penny. But so what I did, I got a sweater and buttoned the sweater around my head and let the sleeves hang down, so I could go around and swing my hair. And I tell people today I don't have to worry about that because I got my own hair. And then people would say, especially people who are not of color, they know that this is my hair. And then they would say things like, but I mean, did you go to the store and buy it? No, I did not buy it. This is really mine. But I always felt that if things were different, I felt that if I just get out of my mama's house, that's what I needed. When I graduated from high school, I went down to ECU. I was talking to someone earlier about Greenville. ECU was considered party school. So I went down there and never went home. Very rarely did I go home. I only went when I had to go. But people were having parties up in the boys' dorm on Friday and Saturday night. They were drinking Boone's Farm, and I forgot that other stuff. But I would drink only because everybody else was doing it, and I wanted to feel like I fit in. Normally, I would sit over in the corner, just this old silly grin, watching everybody else out there looking like they were having fun. But I never felt like that I was a part of you. I felt like I lived in this little ball and life was going on around me. And I just didn't know how to respond. I studied really hard. I left ECU and I moved to Durham thinking that I was going to be in Durham 1 year. And then I was going to move to Denver, Colorado for a little bit because I always wanted to see the Rocky Mountains. And then I was going to move to San Francisco because I always wanted to see San Francisco. And so I used to say, when I first got sober, I got stuck in that hellhole. I used to think that Durham was my problem. The people in Durham, that was my problem. They still call Durham the Bull City. And I used to say, yeah, that's exactly what it is, a bunch of bulls. But they call it the Bull City because Durham was tobacco country. And they used to have the tobacco in a little cloth drawstring bag. And it had a man on that bag, stamped on that bag, riding a bull. And so that's how Durham became known as the Bull City. Today I know I've learned in this program about geographical cures. I know that there's no running away from the problem because the problem is right here. And that is so hard for people who are not like us to understand that. They think, well, if I move to Boston or if I move to Pennsylvania, that's what I need. I know for me today that I have to stop and take a look at myself and see what the problem is. If I look in the mirror, I'm looking at the problem. When I moved to Durham, I started I wanted to have a wine rack in my house, so when you came to my house, and alcohol, so I could ask you, what kind of drink would you like? And then I could stir your drink up for you, and you'd think I was very smart. But it got to the place that if I saw you come into my house and I knew that you drank more than I did, I'd hide my alcohol before you got there. I was a school teacher. I started one boyfriend that I had was a gambler. I'd stand in liquor house, school teacher now, but I'm standing in the liquor houses behind him, watching him gamble, run home 6 o'clock in the morning, jump in the shower, put my clothes on, and go to the school and teach school. I did that for many years. And I did something that I know many women, no other woman in the world probably did it but me. I thought I had to have a man in my life. Today I know that I made men little gods in my life. And I felt that I would depend on the man to make me happy, to complete me. I didn't want to marry him now, just had to have it. But today I know that I can't count on you to complete me. I can't count on you to create my happiness. I have to create my own happiness. So it went from there into other things. One day I told him that I wanted him to go his way and I was going to go mine. He didn't like that idea, put a gun to my head, dropped a weight in my stomach. I ran out of the house that I was renting like 2 o'clock in the morning, barefooted, and walked when I hear a car coming, I jump in the ditch because I was scared. And I get out of the ditch, and I kept walking over to my friend's house. She lived maybe like 3 miles away from there. But back to what I did, I don't think no other woman, I gave him my paycheck every month, thinking that he can turn this money over, and this time it's going to be different. Every month, it was the same thing in the hole every month. That night when I told him I wanted him to leave me alone and we're going to separate, I didn't even have a can of beans. I didn't have one thing in my house to eat. I was going to school borrowing money or bumming money from my kids to eat. One of my students, I felt that he was selling drugs. I don't know, but he didn't like change. He'd sit in the room and thump the change across the room. After the class was dismissed, I'd go around and scrape the money up off the floor, and that's what I used to eat with. Things got progressively worse. With this guy that night, he didn't like what I told him. The next morning, I was at my friend's house. I had crawled up under the bed because I was scared of him. He came and he said, I know she's here, but I'm not going to hurt her. I crawled out from up under the bed. And we got in my car. He's driving my car. We get in my car. We go back to my house. And he said, I did something last night I know you're never going to forgive me for. So I said, what'd you do? Set the house on fire? So he said, no. I said, what you do? Cut up all my clothes? So he said, why you say that? Don't ask me why or why I said that. I don't know. But throughout my life, different things have happened like this. I don't know where it comes from. Today I know that it was God talking to me. We got to the house. I put the key in the door, and during the night he had cut up everything I owned, destroyed everything but the stove, the refrigerator, the knives, and the forks. I didn't even have a clean pair of drawers. That's underwear for y'all who don't know. I didn't even have a clean pair of drawers to wear to work. I had to borrow some drawers from someone to wear to work. That was the first time I called my mama. I wanted my mama to be proud of me. I was the first one that had gone away to school. And my mama had this saying, you leave them alone and they'll come home, dragging the tails behind them. I never wanted to hear my mama say that. But that morning I called my mama and she told me, she said, for as long as you live, I want you to understand that ain't nobody ever going to love you the way your mama loves you. I know that's not the case for everybody, but that was the case with me and my mom. I went down to my mama's house on the other side of Raleigh from Durham. I stayed down there 2 weeks, and I was right back in Durham doing the same thing with the very same guy. In this program, I learned that insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. When I came back to Durham after that 2 weeks, that was the first night, I was on the verge of having to sleep in my car. I don't know what kind of friends you rode around with, but the ones that I rode around with, if you needed a ride across town, you're going to have to do something. You're going to have to give up something. Well, I ain't got no gas. You got some gas money? You're going to have to do something. I called one of my so-called friends. I went by her house, really, knocked on the door, and she was there. She would not open the door and let me in. Next, I went to the pay telephone booth and I called the girl, and so I was telling her a little bit what was going on. I had to sleep in the car. So she said, "Oh, you don't have to sleep in the car. Come on, you can stay with me until you get your first paycheck, and this time it's going to be different." So I go with her, and she lets me wear her clothes, and I'm going to teach school. That September was my birthday. My mama did something she had never done in life. Today, I know she probably didn't know where I was, but my mama always called me at 6 o'clock on my birthday. And so I called a friend. I said, "My mama did call me. It's my birthday." So he said, "You don't have to sit over there by yourself and cry." He said, "Come on over and we can put our pennies together." And he said, "You got a car and you go to the store and get a six-pack." So I went over. We got enough, scraped enough together to get a six-pack. I went down on Andrew Avenue to the mini mart, and I was at the stop sign. I heard somebody, here, come here. It was the girl I was staying with. She introduced me to this man, and they were drinking Jim Beam. I hated that stuff then, and when I quit drinking, I hated that stuff. And so he poured me some in a glass. When he turned his back, I poured it in the mud puddle. And so the next day that was Saturday. That Sunday, she worked at night at the hospital. He called me, and I told him, I said, "Look, I don't be doing stuff like this behind nobody's back, especially no friends." So he said, "I don't go with her. I just know her." So, and he said, "All I want to do is take you out to eat." I said, "Nah." He called again on Monday. He called again on Tuesday. By Wednesday, I was real hungry. So I said, okay. We rode over to Raleigh on 70 Glenwood Avenue to the Red Lobster. And this man had 4 girls that he had raised or reared by himself for 12 years. And he had always said that he would never date until the youngest one got old enough to stay at home by herself. At that time, on my birthday in September, she would have been 12 the next month. So we came back to Durham. I didn't tell him. I'm not stupid now. I didn't tell him everything about me. But I told him how the guy had cut up all my clothes and stuff. So he reached in his pocket, pulled out some money. He said, "You ain't got to wear nobody else's clothes." He said, "You take this and go buy you some clothes tomorrow." And he said, "If that ain't enough, you come on back and see me." So I guess I had real fun that night. We had not even held hands. I had never met anybody that loved me unconditionally like that, where I didn't have to do something in return. He told me, he said, "You don't have to stay with her. Find your apartment." He said, "I'll pay for it. Find your furniture. I'll buy it." It took me a while to trust him, to believe him. But finally I did. I got the apartment, and he paid for it, got the furniture. He put the furniture in there. And then he started asking me something that I knew I wasn't going to do. He started asking me to marry him. This was only maybe 4 days after we had met. He started asking me to marry him. I told him, but when I did that Wednesday, that Saturday, he started asking me to marry him. I told him, I said, "You are stupid, just pure stupid." Because he really didn't know what I was all about. So after a couple of weeks or so, the committee in my head said, "If you tell him, yeah, you can get a diamond, and then you can pawn it if you want to." So one day, and my family met him. Everybody loved this man, but me. And the reason I did not really like him was because my husband wore his hair flat top, and that was enough just to turn me off of it, And but I told him, yeah, we went up to Raleigh, we got the diamond and stuff. So then he started wanting to know when we're going to get married, and I kept putting him off. By that December, he told me, he said, "I'm not going to ask you to marry me anymore." And I'm going, well, okay. So we went down on January the 8th of 1983. We went down to Dillon, South Carolina, and we got married. After we got married, I told him what I was all about. So he kept saying things like, "Stop running around with those friends you're hanging around with. You'll be okay." I tried that. That did not work. If you stop going to those places, you'll be fine. That did not work. He took me on nice vacations. That did not work. My only thought was, we went to Hawaii, and then during that time, the 2 expensive things in Hawaii were alcohol and soft drinks, because they had to be imported in. I ain't caring about no Hawaii. I'm looking like I'm going to get another drink, and just hurry up and get me back to Durham so I can get what I want when I want it. So eventually, one of his friends told him, said, "Man, so cut the money." And then she ain't got no money to do stuff with. He started giving me $1 a day. What are you going to do with $1? I started forging my husband's names on his checks. I'd go up the road, wait for the mailman every month, because then they delivered the bank statements, to the house. I'd wait and get the bank statements so he wouldn't see what I had done. I was getting just lots of stuff. I didn't never go to no court, because my husband just got on the telephone, called the lawyer, and took care of everything over the telephone. I sold everything he had that had a drop cord on it. Take it to the pawn shop. I pawned my jewelry 3 times. The last time I pawned my jewelry, he'd go back and get them every time, and he'd say, I'm not going to give them back to you until I feel assured that you're going to stay clean and sober. And he would always tell me, he said, I think you're going to kill yourself at the rate that you are going. I don't know about you. I don't like nobody telling me what I can't do, because I would die trying to show you that I can. During that time, my family had come to Durham. They had a conference with me. And my oldest brother said, we found out that there was a place in Richmond and one in Atlanta where you can go and get some help for yourself. My response was, you just stay out of my business. I can take care of stuff myself. Because I always thought my older brother wanted to be somebody's daddy. My brother died maybe 4 years ago. Today I know that my brother only acted the way he did because he wanted to make sure that we were taken care of. When my dad left my mom, he was 10. He felt it was his responsibility to make sure that we had. He devoted his life to that. So my husband cut the money. Somebody told me about a crime. It was so easy. I did it. We split the money. And one guy wanted more, a bigger portion. So he said, if you don't give me some more of the money, he said, I'm going to go tell your husband what you're doing. I didn't think nobody had enough nerve to tell my husband something, especially something on me. So I told him, I said, if you think you're bad enough, I said, have at it. Do what you think is best. That night my husband came home, so he said, what do you know about such and such? I don't know. Who are you accusing me of something? I don't know what you're talking about. So he said, that's okay. Before it's all over with, you will know what I'm talking about. So a few months later, I was with him at his place of business. All these detective cars pulled up. So I ran inside and I told him, I said, you know that crime you asked me about? So he said, yeah. I said, I do know something about it. By then, they were all inside, so he said, go on downtown with them, tell them everything that they need to know. I ain't had no problem going with them because I knew he was going to come in just a few minutes and get me out. He didn't come. That was the first moment of realization, sanity that I had, and I realized, I thought, well, I've run this one in the ground. But backtrack just a little bit, I did things to my husband. At night, I would lay in the bed and think, God, please let him have to go pee. Let him go pee. Because when my husband would get up and go to the bathroom at night, I'd stick my hand down in his pocket because he hung the pants on the bedpost. I'd grab out some money. It was dark in the bedroom, so I didn't know how much I grabbed, but I would hear him tell his friend, it's something you work all week and you have less on Friday than you started with on Monday, but he never said, I know what you're doing. One time I broke in my husband's place of business. I stole the whole cash register drawer, got the money out, and went outside and threw the till box down in the gutter, street gutter. The next day I was with him and his friend said, man, you find out who broke in here last night? He said, no. But it had to be somebody that the dog knew. We had a vicious dog, and we were the only ones that could come to dog. My husband still did not point a finger at me and said, I know you did it. I went home, and I remember what my family had said about Richmond and Atlanta, and I thought, well, if he wants to come and see me, at least maybe to Richmond, he could drive. So I called 411. I told the lady, I said, ma'am, I got a problem. And I said, somebody told me I could get some help in Richmond. So she said, hold on just a minute. She gave me a number and the name of a place. I went, I wrote it down. When my husband came home, I told him that I was going to go to Richmond to treatment, and he got so angry and he left the house. Because when I went downtown, because of all the things that I had done, they told me I was looking at 20 years in women's prison. And I thought, if I go with the treatment, the judge can say, ooh, look how good she did. You know, she got going to, I didn't still know AA at that point. She just went to treatment, and he wouldn't give me 20 years in prison. But when my husband came back, he said, I'm going to wait for you, but I want you to know this will be the last time. My sister took me to Richmond, but before we left Durham, I took my last drink of alcohol in the bathroom down at McDonald's on Avondale Drive. I went to treatment thinking I was going to lay up in the bed and you were going to bring me my food every day. They said, no, ma'am, you're going to have to work. And then they said, you're going to have to go to these AA meetings. AA, what's that? So if you were in the first 30 days of the program, the only outside contact you had was at the AA meeting. So on Sunday morning, we'd walk 52 long blocks to the AA meeting. They held it at the Holiday Inn up on West Broad Street there in Richmond. My husband drove from Durham to Richmond, and he'd drive the car real slow right behind the line, because at first they would not let me ride with him. And he would sit beside me at the AA meetings. At the AA meetings, I sat on the back row. Well, first when I walked in, I was scared to death. I didn't want you to touch me. Not because I thought I was better than you, because I was scared. You know how I was sitting around with hold hands and somebody wanted to hug you, so glad you're here. I would die on the inside that you were going to touch me, get close to me. I walked in, I thought they had ushers at the door. They men in suit like Wallace got on over there tonight with necktie on. So they told me back at the place, they said, by the time you come in here from that second meeting, you better walk in that door with a sponsor. I didn't know what no sponsor was. The only thing I remember about that first meeting was they had some Mountain Dew on the table and some cookies. So that's why I sat on the back row, because they wouldn't let us have sugar at the facility. I remember that. I remember the ushers and the man who spoke. I remember he was tall. He read this poem. And basically, normally I read it. I forgot and left it in the car. But basically it says, I asked God for strength that I might achieve. I was made weak that I might learn humbly to obey. I asked for riches that I might have the praise of men. I was given poverty so I could feel the need of God. Those words resonated with me. I thought, that's what I felt like all of my life. And I was too scared to ask the man if I could have a copy of the poem, but over the years, God made a way for me to run across that poem. So those are words that I stand on. They told us we could go out of the house another day of the week if you went with your sponsor. So I told the lady, I said, yeah, okay. I want to go with you to your meeting. On Wednesday night, she would come and get me and bring me a 2-liter Mountain Dew. And I could have what I wanted. She did for me what I do for all the ladies that I sponsor. She bought me my first big book. She bought me Living Sober. That little book saved my life so many times. Because in there I could read, what do you do when you have a dream about drinking again? What do you do if you got to go to an event at work and they're serving alcohol? That little book answered all those questions for me. Then she gave me another book that is non-conference approved now. It's called Tools for Fools. And I said, what's she trying to call me stupid or something? But that book also helped save my life. I still have that book on my bookshelf today. After 4 months, I was still facing those 20 years. My husband would come and visit me. And somebody had told him how few of us make it. And he looked at me and he said, I don't think you're going to make it. And again, I already told you, don't let nobody tell me what I can't do. So I was bound and determined to prove to him that I was going to make it. So when I came after 4 months, 2 more days would have been 4 months, and he was insisting that I come home to Durham. The facility didn't think I was ready. My sponsor told me, she said, if you go to Durham and you go to 90 meetings in 90 days and you do absolutely everything those people tell you to do, she said, you're going to be okay. So I came back to Durham. I went to a meeting that night. My husband went with me because he knew how scared I was. If it was an open meeting, he would come inside and sit beside me. And if this were a closed meeting, you best believe he would have been standing right outside that door. He went with me for about 4 months until he asked me one day, you think you can go by yourself? My sponsor got me quickly into working these steps. I used to say I made amends. I ain't make amends to nobody. My husband was the one that made the financial amends. When it came time for me to go to court, I was telling people if the judge feels it necessary for me to go to prison to make amends for what I had done, I was willing to go. And even people in the rooms were telling me, you ain't right in the head. I went to court that morning and I told the judge the very same thing. I said, if you feel it necessary for me to go to prison, I'm ready to go. And he looked at me and he said, I remand you to the custody of women's prison for a period of not less than 5 years. And then he said suspended. He placed me on 5 years supervised probation. The closest I came to women's prison, I had to go on a 2-hour tour of the facility on Bragg Street in Raleigh. A few months later, they were having the 50th anniversary of AA in Montreal, Canada. And if you got a criminal record, you lose your citizenship if you're a felon. So that means you can't go out of the country. My probation officer was the one that went to the judge and told her, so everything that I have asked this woman to do, she has done it. If I tell her to be in my office at 9 o'clock, she's standing outside the door at 8:55. When I go by her house to tell her, she says she's sitting on the porch waiting for me. The judge told me, he said, I'm going to take you off these restraints. He said, but I tell you what, when you hit that United States border coming back, he said, you better stop and call her. I said, yes, sir. He said, when you get to North Carolina line, you better do the same thing. I said, yes, sir. After 6 months being on supervised probation, my probation officer called me in and she said, something has happened that has never happened in history. The judge signed an order releasing me from all restrictions. She looked at me and she said, because we had become friends, she said, I hate to see you go. I said, you crazy? But still, this program at that point had been drilled into me so much. My sponsor got me into service work. I washed ashtrays. After 4 months of being in program, I thought I was ready to chair a meeting, discussion meeting. And one little lady said, what do you think you're doing? They had a notebook. You sign your name in there that you're going to chair the meeting. So she said, what do you think you're doing? I said, I'm putting my name in the book. She said, for what? I said, so I can lead the meeting. She said, get your tail over yonder in that chair and sit down. I could have cussed her out, but I didn't. This program was drilled into me. You do what you're told to do. I sat down. So my job for a while was she made a cake every week. She cut the cake. She said, come here. Take this cake over yonder and ask him if he want a piece of cake. Take him a napkin. I did what I was told to do. I was told to wash the ashtrays. I washed the ashtrays. I watch people. I still do. I watch what I call winners. There were 3 people that I thought were winners. I'd see them come to the meeting early, so I said, okay, I can do that. I'd see them walk in. It had that big book stuck up on the arm like that. So I said, okay, I can do that too. So I started coming to the meeting, making sure I had my big book with me. I did the simple things. I went to newcomers meeting. I went to 2 meetings every day, even before I went to court. And after I went to court, I still kept it up because I love this new way of life. And like I say, it was drilled into me. After a period, I wanted to start going back to church. And my sponsor, I was scared to tell him. My sponsor was Diane, and if anybody knows Diane, she died maybe like 6 years ago with many, many years of many years of sobriety. I told her I wanted to start going back to church, and so she told me, she said, as long as you're doing something to improve yourself spiritually, she said, you will not hear a peep out of me. My home group is the Durham Central Group in Durham. We meet 4 nights a week. So I started going back to church on Sunday night. When I get out of church, still today, this happens today, I jump in the car, be flying down that road, thinking I'll be saying, oh God, please don't let the police stop me. Because I get to the meeting. I don't care if it's not but 5 more minutes. I show up at the meeting. I still give service. I have a sponsor. My sponsor has a sponsor. This program works. Back on September 19th, 1992, it was on a Saturday night. Then we had church on a Saturday night. My husband would always be at home. I could count on that. When I walked in that house, I knew my husband was going to be there. That was the stability in my life. I pulled my house set up on the hill. I pulled up in the driveway and I saw him sitting in the truck, and somebody was in the truck with him. And I said, I know he ain't stupid enough to bring no woman here to my house. So I get out of the car and there were 2 guys sitting in the truck with him. I go around and he said, here, take the phone. Then telephones were bigger than this, way bigger than this. And he said, go in the house and get my thing, which I knew was his gun. He said, I got to go down to McDougal Terrace and do a call for them. And he said, anything can happen down there. I said, yeah, you're right. I went in the house. I came back. I gave my husband his gun. He put it right here on the dash. The 2 guys just kept looking straight out the windshield. I knew where my husband had to go. My husband was like this. If he said he was going to Walmart and coming back home, you can count on him. He'd go to Walmart and come straight back home. So I knew that it should have taken him no more than 25 minutes. After 25 minutes, I looked over at the microwave. My husband was not back at home. I went to the telephone. I called 911. I said, I want to report a missing person. For a long time, people say, why are you reporting missing? After 25 minutes. I said, I can't tell you how I knew. I felt it. So the policeman came, and so he's going, what color is it? I'm looking at him like, you must be new in Durham. I said, because everybody in Durham knows my husband. So he took the information. He left. I went out on the front porch, standing out there waiting. Eventually, another officer pulled up in front of the house. For a long time, it was like a broken record. I could see him stepping up on the steps. He put his foot on the porch, and his radio went off. And he said, just a minute, Miss Burke. So he went back to his car. He stayed in his car a long time. So he came back, and he said, I'm sorry, he's deceased. I said, what are you talking about, deceased? He said, I'm sorry, he's dead. I said, where is he? He said, I can't tell you because they didn't want the scene contaminated. But that night they charged 3 guys with shooting my husband in the head and robbing him. One was 16, one was 24, and the one that pulled the trigger and had planned everything was 32 years old. Those 3 guys got life sentences. It happened 2 months before the new law. The new law now states that if you get life sentence, you're going to come out in a casket. That's the way it is. But the old law stated that you pull about 20 years, and then they would let you go depending on what your behavior was like on the inside. The 24-year-old asked the DA, said, can I write her a letter? So she called me. She said, Harriet, he was somewhere with some people that he had no business being. And North Carolina has guilt by association law. If Wallace and I tonight staying here and say, I sure wish I had some money, I said, yeah, me too. And Wallace said, come on, walk me down to the store. I'm going to buy me a Pepsi Cola. And I go down there and I kill the man. They're going to charge Wallace too. He could eventually get out of it, but that's the guilt by association law. And they gave all 3 guys life sentences only because when they figured out something was going on, they didn't walk away and they didn't alert my husband. Back to the middle one. I received the letter. He asked me in the letter to please forgive him, and that he knew that he was asking me something that he more than likely could never do himself. When the trials came, I had to go to the court because I'm a stepmom. I'm the other mom. Don't let nobody fool when somebody died. People go crazy, thinking you're going to rip them off from something. So I was having to go to all 3 trials, right by myself. I step off the elevator, and one of the guys' family members would say, yeah, that'll be, stuff like that I had to deal with. When it came down to sentencing, the middle one asked the judge, said, can I say something to her? So the judge looked at me and I said, yes. So he said, he looked me in the eye, he said, will you please forgive me? And I said, yes. The fact is that now we write each other every 2 weeks. If he doesn't hear from me in 2 weeks, he thinks, and he does this knowing that he could be revoked because he's not supposed to contact me. If I'm in this room and he steps in here, he has to leave. I was at my home group one night standing in the line waiting to see my sponsor and to give her a hug. Somebody tapped me on the shoulder and I turned around. There was a guy standing there. And he said, lady, can I ask you what your name is? I said, you already know what it is. It's the one that killed my husband. And the group member said, Harry, I didn't know it was your husband. And he said, wherever we go, he tells people his part in it, and he tells people that he wants to spend the rest of his life trying to help you if you would let him. They eventually let him out, and you know how it is, one thing led to the other. I said, Tony, are you still going to meetings? No, because they got me on house arrest, and you have to be in at a certain time. And I'm thinking, because I don't know of a probation officer who won't let you stay out an extra hour if you're going to a meeting doing something trying to help yourself. One thing led to the other, and they revoked him again. I asked Angel, who's going to be down at Aberdeen next weekend, I said, Angel, how long do you think they're going to make him pull this time? He said, Harriet, the sad truth is they may make him pull the rest of his life on the inside. But still, I advocate for him. He had started smoking reefer before he got back in the last time. His probation officer made me feel that tall. I told the probation officer, I said, man, I had high hopes for him. And the probation officer told me, he said, I still have hope for him. And I told him, and I said, you are absolutely right. If I don't hear from Tony in 2 weeks, I think he's done something maybe inside. I go on the computer, punch his name in, and see. Before he was arrested, the only thing that he had done in life was it said destroy personal property. And I said, that could have been he broke his girlfriend's radio. And while he's been inside, he's only had 5 offenses. 2 times was for use of profanity. 2 times was like out of place or failure to follow an order. The one that pulled the trigger, he's had like 45 offenses since he's been on the inside, from inciting a riot, fighting an officer, and on and on. The good news for Tony is this past January, I went over to Raleigh. I came back to them. I told him, I said, I had that man crying up in there, the commissioner. The man told me, he said, Miss Brinkley, I told him, I said, I don't know what it would be like for me to do something and somebody would never give me another chance. And that man told me, he said, Miss Brinkley, if I had bet every penny I had on what you were going to say when you came in here this morning, he said, I would be a broke man right now. So right now, I'm waiting for the letter. I'm praying, and please help me pray that the letter is going to say that they have decided to give him a second chance. People have asked me, they said, You think he's ready? I said, I don't know. Because if I did that, then I would be standing in God's spot trying to pass judgment on someone. This program works. My sponsor taught me, I don't care what the problem is in your life, these same 12 steps will work. This past November, normally it's about November, I'm asked to come down here. I couldn't come because I had knee surgery. With knee surgery, I almost lost both my legs this past time. I told people, I had the picture on the phones. I said, my legs look like fried turkey legs because I have to wear this now for the rest of my life because I am highly sensitive to the antibiotic that they gave me during surgery. But my higher power, whom I choose to call God, has given me another chance. Tonight I stand here before you without the walker, without the cane, and I'm doing it. But it's all because of God's mercy. And I tell people that this problem, I remember I had a problem one time, and my sponsor, I told her, she said, oh, it's all good. Now, if you didn't know Diane, she won't know about it, you're just going to walk up and say any old thing too. So after a few days, I went back and I asked, I said, what did you mean? Because I thought maybe she had lost her mind, I said, what did you mean when you said that it was all good? She said, when problems come, don't they draw you closer to God? Don't they make you call out for his help? I couldn't do anything but say yes. When I started this program, soon to be 35 years ago, I was taught if you have trouble praying, push your shoes as far as you can up under the bed at night and simply say, thank you. In the morning, get down there and pull your shoes out and simply say, please help me. I did that for many years. My prayer life grew from that. But it got to the place I got too busy for God. I would plan my day and leave God up on the shelf. Okay, stay right here till I come back now. I got to go to Walmart. I need a new telephone. And then during oh, God, please bless my babies, my Sunday school class. Oh, Lord, don't let nobody hurt them. I kept pushing God further out of my life. A few years ago, I went to a spiritual retreat, and we made God boxes. In the God box, you put anything you want God's help with. So I put, I want to go to South Africa. I want to see Alaska. I want to go to Los Cabos. I want to meet Steph Curry. God made a way for me to go to South Africa. I didn't go only because that was when Ebola hit. So some people say, it ain't in South Africa. I said, I don't care. Maybe somebody on the plane got it, Alaska. I would have gone to Alaska this past September, but I kept having more trouble with my knee. About 8 months ago, God made a way for me to go to Los Cabos. And with Steph Curry, I was going to throw him out of the box. I like that young man. And I never heard him fighting nobody, cussing nobody out and stuff, always like a family man. And I told my granddaughter, I said, I'm going to take him out of the box. He's a multi-millionaire. That ain't going to never happen, my meeting him. And she said, Mima, but God. I said, you're absolutely right. So Steph Curry's still in the box. So when the first nurse, they had me homebound since November. The first nurse that came, I was telling her about this God box. And she started crying. And I told her, God used my almost losing my legs to get me back to him. I looked in the corner one day. It was as if I saw God squatted down and his hand was in the air and he's looking back at me and he said, you asked me to help get you back to the place of reaching out to me when you first opened your eyes. He said, but you don't like what I had to do to get your attention. With my almost losing my legs, God got my attention and drew me back to the place when my eyes open now. The first thing in the morning is I look and I said, God, please help me today. Help me to know what your will is. If I'm not willing to do your will, do whatever you have to do to get me to that place of willingness. And part of willingness is doing what I've been asked to do, being a part of celebrations like tonight down here with Wallace. It is my honor to be here for your 55th anniversary. And I want to thank each of you for having me. If you're ever in Durham Central Group, you find me right there next to the fire. Thank you.